Ex podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Deus Ex podcast, a place where some of the most progressive and innovative builders, thought leaders, and traders in the crypto space come together to discuss all areas of the crypto industry. Whether you're into DeFi, Layer 1s, Layer 2s, NFTs, or anything in between, we've got you covered. And as a reminder, nothing said on this podcast should be construed as financial advice or as a solicitation to buy or sell any digital asset or security. The comments, views, and opinions expressed by the hosts or guests on the podcast are their own. As always, you'll need to do your own research. Now, with that out of the way, let's get to the episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Deus Ex podcast. In this episode, we're talking with Cristian from Omnia, which brings privacy to RPC nodes. I'm also joined by Ape and Cerberus from Deus Ex, and I'm Ape. Hey Cerberus, how are you doing?
Hey Ape, hey Cristian, very good myself. So I'm very excited about this podcast. So to start, a few words about Deus Ex DAO. We are an investment syndicate formed by native crypto investors who are advising and investing in the crypto space. Our group is formed by members who are specialized in different areas of the crypto industry, from DeFi power users to fundamental analysts, all the way to short time frame traders. We are very curious, Cristian, about you and about Omnia. Could you please introduce yourself and say a few words about Omnia?
Yeah, and sure. Before we start this, I think it's important to know that we are helping Omnia in testing these RPC nodes, and we are invested in the project. So we definitely support what they're doing, and we want to introduce them to you. So Cristian, take it off and let us know what is Omnia and who are you working at Omnia.
Thanks. Happy to be part of the podcast, and thanks for bringing me on. So, Omnia, it's about privacy, and beyond the privacy, there is also an aspect of decentralization, which is the core of the blockchain, right? Myself, as the position, I'm the CEO of Omnia Protocol, but as a founder, you need to do all the stuffs that are implied in a startup. So that's the life of a founder. I'm very, let's say, fortunate because I have my twin brother also on the project. He is the CTO of Omnia Protocol. So we kickstarted this project more than a year now with Omnia. And the issues that Omnia tries to solve out there in the space, it's basically around the privacy and decentralization, as I said before. And in relates to the privacy, we're trying to add the missing part of the privacy in the blockchain when accessing the data on chain. That means that we come up with a protocol named Omnia Protocol, which can offer everyone the possibility to access the blockchain privately. That means that we can read data from the blockchain or to put data, more exactly to make transactions on blockchain while being private. And it's important to mention the fact that there are two types of privacy out there in the space, and one must not confuse them because in order to have the holy grail like the privacy, you need to have end-to-end privacy, which translates basically into parts. One of that is the off-chain privacy, the one that we are tackling. The off-chain privacy starts from the wallet of the user or the application that one developer could develop, and ends when the transaction hits the blockchain and it's being public. That's the time frame where we come in place to assure the privacy. And afterwards, there is the on-chain privacy, which is mainly covered by zero-knowledge proof systems or other privacy coins based on pools or whatever technology might be. Some examples in that regard are Tornado Cash, Monero, Zcash, those types of privacy coins. But as I said before, it's important to mention the fact that you need to have both privacy and on-chain privacy in place. So that's the thing that we are trying to solve out there in the space. And secondly, the decentralization part, where we can see now that there are a few players out there which are consisting like over 80% of the traffic to the blockchain goes through them, and this becomes a central point of failure, which in the vision of the blockchain shouldn't be happening. It's supposed to be decentralized, and actually the nodes out there in the place should form this protocol where at any time you can do requests on blockchain without having the issues of the service going down, as it happened with other central node providers out there in the space. So that's like the short intro about the issues that we are trying to solve around Omnia.
So how are RPC nodes utilized in crypto now, and how are you trying to make them private?
That's a good question. The RPC nodes are basically the heart of the communication with the blockchain. Let's imagine that you have your Web3 wallet installed on your, let's say, desktop, your browser, and when you make a transaction, let's say you want to send two ethers to a friend. Basically, you are making a kind of request from your wallet to the blockchain, and in order to transmit that information on the blockchain so it can be processed, you need to talk with the RPC node. That's the role of RPC nodes. It's basically to communicate with the front end, like the users of the system, with the chain. And there are also some complication about the consensus of the network and so on, but the primarily role is to communicate with the blockchain. And now the way that someone can read data from blockchain or to put data on chain is basically to spin up their own nodes. It's open source, the code. There are multiple clients that can be used, and you need a server or a computer that's up all the time to be fully synced and like not being behind. And basically you can modify your application or your let's say your wallet to access that node in order to communicate with the blockchain. But not everyone of like out there in the space it's so techy and knows how to spin up a nodes, and very hard to maintain it actually because of the cost, and also you have to update it and so on. And in replace, there are few node providers which spinned up like thousands of nodes and infrastructures to have multiple nodes running, and like over 80% of the users are in behind using those centralized services. There is one entity that has a lot of resources, and when you want to communicate with the blockchain, you basically send your request from your wallet to that specific central entity, which then use the other RPC nodes to communicate into the chain.
So you will be a new entity in the game, and moreover, you will be private.
Exactly. We will be a new entity, which compared to the other, which are centralized, we are going to be decentralized, meaning that the protocol will work in such a way that we are not the central point of all the service, in order to be scalable and also to be private. That means that we allow everyone to join with RPC nodes to onboard in our system, and basically we form this resource pool of nodes which can be accessed by anyone, and in practice you will get rewarded for putting that node up and running and providing the resources for Omnia, because people will come to Omnia protocol, generate subscription to access the blockchain, and based on the payments that they will have, you will be rewarded as a resource in that pool. So that's how the protocol is going to happen. It's important to mention that we are not going to be centralized. We are going to only to orchestrate the decentralization part, meaning that, let's say, in the resource pool, we have 10,000 of RPC nodes onboarded, spread it around the world. It can be own data centers, can be cloud infrastructure, can be even central node providers, and so on. But the cool fact is that, let's say, for example, in case Infura goes down, you'll still have 9,099 nodes available that can serve your request. That's the thing. And you mentioned the privacy, and it's very important because when you are centralized, you can basically see every request and every data that comes in and out to the blockchain.
I really want to emphasize why that decentralization of these RPC nodes is important, because you mentioned Infura, and in April 2022, Infura went down basically, and dragged a lot of the ecosystem with it, because there were at least 30 million MetaMask users who are as a default connected to Infura, and they couldn't interact with the network. So they thought that maybe Ethereum is down, but that wasn't the case. It was Infura, that RPC node provider, that went down. And basically what you say with Omnia is that is not possible. So that's a really important point you mentioned there. Decentralizing these RPC nodes is important. And then the other aspect to Omnia is that privacy is important. Why do you think this privacy is so important from the RPC endpoint?
So I think the privacy on the RPC point, it's something that very few people think that there is a missing point, and actually there is a pain out there, because if you are using a privacy coin, doesn't matter the privacy coin that you are using, you can still be tracked. Because if you, let's say, for example, that I'm using Tornado Cash to make a transaction, like place 1 ETH and then pull it out on other ETH addresses, so no one can link them together. But if there is one central entity that gets that request, those two requests, they basically map your IP address to the same processes, and then they have the link together, and this is how your privacy perishes, because you don't have the off-chain privacy. And I think the heart of the blockchain is through the access points of it, and it's very important to have privacy on top of that. Of course, there are some solutions out there that can tackle the problem. One of them are VPNs, or more recently, there are some projects in the decentralized VPN solutions. Or you can use, for example, onion routing, such as Tor, to hide your IP address and so on. But there are lots of academic papers putting out there the explanation and how it's happening already. Basically, the traffic that goes through that service is being de-anonymized, because there is encryption involved, meaning that you have the content encrypted and no one through the process can see the data in. But actually, you have metadata, which is not protected when you are using VPN or like onion routing. Metadata means like the pattern of the protocol that you are using, timings, size of the packets, and so on. And based on that, you can be identified through all the traffic that is being encrypted. That's one missing piece that very few companies realize that's a missing spot right there. And I can name already 2 projects that they are very good on solving these issues. One of them is NIM Technologies, and the other is Hopper. We are planning to use the mixnets in order to provide the privacy. This is the name of the technology that they are developing, and also like hiding the metadata, not only the content behind it. And because you asked what's the point of having privacy on the RPC nodes, just let us think like the waste of fees and the money lost in front-running attacks. It basically, when you do a transaction on a DEX, on a decentralized exchange, you can place a bid, and you have a slippage, let's say 5%, that the price can go up, and you're still accepting that price. But The off-chain privacy, it's basically the one that dictates that every node can listen for that transaction. And actually when they see, let's say a bot or whatever server it's in place, they see the transaction and they can increase the price, sandish your transaction, and then sell it again. And you lost 5% of the amount only because someone switched that. And we also offer protection of front running. But yeah, that's the thing around the privacy.
So it actually prevents the sandwich attacks, which I think a lot of people are working on with, MEV bots and MEV type protections.
Actually, the MEV protection is something that it's added on top of the mixnets. We are relying on already in place private mempools. This is the solution for front-running protection. But one common part about the MEV problem with the front-running protection and the mixnets is the off-chain privacy. And let's switch a bit to the mixnets about how they work and why there is important to have it. So in order to maintain a private access to the blockchain, you need like the connection out there, but it needs to be stable and also scalable. And how you perform that? Well, you can look at every chain that is successful, which translates to incentives. So basically, we have to put in place mechanisms so people go out there and spin up their privacy relayers, which is very similar how a node works. And basically, every point of that privacy relay will be online. And when you make, let's say, a request to RPC node, your request gets splitted in different paths through that mixnet. And every point introduces delays or transforms the packet of the information that is sent to the network to have the same size. So basically, if we imagine ourselves looking on the top of this mixnet, you will see flying a lot of packets with the same length, with the same timings from when we start pushing the data and when it arrives. So basically, all the network viewed from on top looks the same. You cannot distinguish the traffic from my side with your side and so on. So that's how the mixnets work. And I think this will be the future of the private communication, at least on the infrastructure level, how to access services privately.
So more of a philosophical question, but where does privacy end and starts? Are transactions fully private?
So, let's say I'm relying on Omnia Protocol to do a transaction. So if I'm using Omnia Protocol, the privacy starts from my wallet. So basically, the device that I'm on might be mobile device or tablet or laptop or whatsoever. And it gets private until the transaction gets introduced to into the blockchain. That means that if I send you, let's say, 5 ethers through this Omnia protocol, no one from the network will know that me, Cristian, will send you 5 ethers until the transaction gets actually included into the chain. And when it gets included to the chain, what other can see, because blockchain is about transparency, they can see that from address A, it got transferred to address B. But no one knows what's my IP address, where is my location, identify me based on the pattern, and so on, because those patterns in the space out there are not only for recognizing the IP address and the location, but also to identifying patterns of trading and so on. So that has implication also in trading and how bots work. That's why it's important. But more on that, if you want to have full end-to-end privacy, you can use, instead of ETH, you can use a transfer on, let's say, Zcash, and then you have end-to-end privacy. So if I'm sending you, let's say 5 coins on Monero or Zcash using Omnia protocol, no one will know that I sent you that amount. It's me and only you will be the only participants that will be aware of that transactions. That's how it works.
And if both addresses on mainnet, so if you're using the Omnia RPC and I'm using it as well, you're sending me 5 ETH. Am I private when I will receive those 5 ETH?
Yeah, of course. So actually, if I send you something, the part that is being implied, it's only on my side because I'm the one that makes the request and interaction with the blockchain. On your side, it basically the distributed ledger only puts you on your account 5 ETH on plus. That's how it works. And if you don't withdraw that or work with that amount, like move it, trading or whatsoever, you are totally unlinked with the blockchain. If you plan to use that amount and you're using Omnia Protocol, again, you'll be covered and you cannot be linked with the transaction that has been happening. But the addresses which are public in the blockchain can be linked together because it's out there in the block.
Okay, so to recap, the privacy starts within the RPC when you are sending 5 ETH, let's say, and when those 5 ETH hits the chain and goes into my wallet, right?
Exactly. And if I may add something, it starts from the moment that you click on your Web3 wallet. Because when you click on your Web3 wallet, it takes a few milliseconds until it reaches the RPC, but we cover also that part.
I understand. And which chains can be used on? Or how many chains do you plan to add to Omnia?
So now we are supporting 5 networks. We kickstarted the MVP in the beginning of the year with Bitcoin, Binance, and Ethereum. I think Ethereum is like 80% usage or so, and Binance like 10% or 12%. So that was the percentage at that time. And now we added support for Polygon and Avalanche. And we support multiple networks, mainnet, testnet. So we have different branches. And if you select Ethereum mainnet, you'll see that we have already integrated the front-running protection.
And how many users? Sorry.
Users, we have around 15,000 with a 10%, I think, usage rate. So users that are constantly using the application, making requests and so on, based on the last metrics that we looked on this week.
With crypto actually moving to multi-chain, yeah, as you said, there is support for multiple chains, different networks. How do you see this forming with a user that wants to become fully private in this multi-chain world?
So I think it's an important thing that you touched on, because we can see now the bridges and how it's happening out there. You basically need the bridges or to jump from one network to another in most of the cases if you want to reduce your costs, if you want to have access to other products and features and so on. So we're already seeing that in the place, and our approach is adding more chains to the network that we support, such that we can offer the people the possibility to use only private connection when interacting. We are not going to implement like a privacy bridge. I think that's something that it's like over our project and not our scope of the project, but there are solutions out there that can do that. And coupled with Omnia, I think would offer for everyone the private access, no matter the chain that they are going to use. In our vision, we are chain agnostic, meaning that we do not interfere with the protocol or to switch how the interaction with the protocol happens, because friction needs to be zero in order to be adopted. That's our vision.
Do you see any potential drawbacks from the privacy point of view from governmental agencies? So, for example, if someone comes to you from a governmental agency and asks you about data, how will you tackle that?
That's one important question, because it relates to the vision and what we want to implement out there. So the privacy, it's important, and actually the data that it's flowing through to the network, it's not on our system, so we cannot see the data that's out there. The only data that we see, it's the one that it's related to the subscription, and we even use some of the technologies which are currently for privacy things to have. Let's split it a bit, the question with that. Basically, when we want to authenticate to make sure that the subscription is paid and so on, we are planning to use zero knowledge proof in order to validate something without looking into the IP or whatever identifier might be there. So this is how we approach that in order to reduce the footprint of data that we collect, because we want to be fully private and to not collect data. And it's another important matter that you raise with the privacy and what drawbacks are according to the use of the privacy. And one important thing that we discovered is that there are lots of scams, especially I think this year, like over 1 billion in just 2 hacks. And the issue out there in the space is that, at least on my side, and we already conflicted that with users, collected that from users, they do not want to deal with scams or whatever funds transited those scams. So our approach is that on the side of the network where the requests do enter, we have some rules in place which will reflect whatever transaction is coming from malicious funds. Because let's say we are live now, Omnia Protocol does work. Let's say something breaks something and steals some coins. We don't want to be the network that allows those hackers to move the funds and to be part of the hack. That's one important thing. And I think this is called compliant privacy. It's basically having privacy, but being compliant in the same time, not compliant necessarily to strict rules, but to be compliant like in a good way. We don't need to process transaction which contains malicious data. And basically we decide to drop your transaction if that amount comes from a hack, let's say, and you are free to use whatever chain, whatever solution that you want to have, but not through the network, because the privacy relayers will be the ones that will redirect the traffic, and no one wants to use that traffic.
So a bad actor will not be able to use your RPC to send the transaction to Tornado Cash, right?
No, they will be able to do that. We are not restricting the access to the privacy pools like Tornado Cash. But let's take the example that this user that wants to send the funds are actually from a hack, and the address which holds the amounts of the hacking, it's known publicly. When that specific hacker does a request, the request will not be going into the network, will be dropped at the edge of the network. So we do not process that transaction.
Who decides that somebody is a malicious actor? Is it all the users in the network coming to some kind of consensus, or is that still an entity like DAO?
So right now we are scraping like what's happening out there, and also using a third-party provider which has all of that solutions, like addresses that are scams, that are hacks, and so on. So basically use that at the moment, and we have some forms for reporting, for checking all the things that are out there. We are planning to also give people the access to check, like a free resource to check their addresses to see if they're like malicious or not. And in medium and long term, we'll have a kind of decision, a decentralized decision based on votes, which translates to voting with the token. Because in the end, we would want to have like the DAO and actually the users to vote for that system. But you see there is a problem with going with a DAO from the beginning, because like the great advantage of a startup is to be agile. And if you switch from a startup which can do things very fast and break things to a DAO which moves very, very, very low, very, very, let's say slowly, we have a problem with that in terms of growth. So that's the issue. And we are planning to transit to a DAO, but in medium and long term.
So this brings the next question on your roadmap, and more specifically on probably the elephant in the room, and what all our listeners are very curious about the Omnia token and what its use in the ecosystem. When will it launch? What is the value accrual? Can you talk a bit about the Omnia token?
Sure. So right now the token it's not live. Like the update on the public, because the public sale didn't yet happen, and the listing itself didn't happen yet. It will be happening somewhere later. I cannot disclose at this moment the exact date. There are some things out there, like the market conditions and everything in place in order to do so. But what it comes to the token, Omnia, which is a utility token in the ecosystem, it's basically, it gives the people the ability, on the thing is to join with the nodes. Because let's say you have a node running for your own system and you want to reduce your costs. You can share that node into the Omnia system. You have to stake a specific amount of Omnia tokens in order to join, because we need to take care that people do not act malicious on the ecosystem, and actually they commit to the performance that they say. And that's one utility of the token, like using the token to join the ecosystem. And then there will be like, if you have a specific token amount holding on your wallet when you generate your subscription, you can have some reduces on the costs, basically reduction fees and so on. Then it will be the case where we as let's say liquidity provider in the ecosystem will use the rewards from the liquidity to reward back the users that are in the ecosystem, and also being rewarded by the ecosystem while you provided access to the people to your RPC nodes. You'll be paid in Omnia tokens. So this is basically what it's around the utility of the token. And more related to the roadmap that it's coming, we are adding more chains, like by month by month, supported in our protocol. We are preparing now the privacy layer part that introduces and moves the entry point, the mixnet, to the edge, not on the servers. So it brings more privacy to the ecosystem. And also the node verification protocol, which checks the performance and the correctness of the data. And then I think later this year will be some optimizations like caching and request batching, which will translate to faster APIs when we want to read data from the chain, and also reduce costs, because with batching you can reduce a lot of the costs out there.
And what would you say is the number one value accrual for the Omnia token? For example, would you do any buybacks? Would you burn anything out of those buybacks? Or would you also do productive assets, meaning that you will farm with your treasury? How will the value go back into the ecosystem?
Exactly. So based on that, we like the token metrics and the things around the token. We have the subscription part, like a third of the subscription is being directly burned, and 1/3 is sent back to the ones that actually put the resources in place. That's one thing, how we reduced the token supply by burning the tokens. The higher the usage, the higher will be the burn. So it has like a curve where the burning rate will follow, because you don't want to be in the position that you burn all the tokens. There needs to be like a curve, and we got that planned already. And more on the farming, yes, we do plan to do that kind of activity with farming and taking the request back to the user that provided with LP. So that's how it's going to happen. And on top of that, because we also need to take care about the token, how it flows in the ecosystem, and not to create selling pressure or other kind of like negativity around the token. That's one important thing. And I think with the staking and long-term benefits to providing resources will be a good manner in order to give incentives to people, but in the same time to perform a good health of the token. That's how we approached it.
I think there is always some interesting part about privacy in crypto. There is always a subsection of the market that wants to have that full privacy. First people think it's the malicious part of the market, but I think a lot of people who are deeply into crypto and have been here for years know that it's actually one of the basis values in crypto. So I think that's already part of the value accrual, that you're doing something quite unique, because most of the focus was on on-chain transactions and not on the RPC nodes. So I think the value will come from people understanding that part is also more important, and understanding that there are centralized points of failure. So in a way, other RPC node operators going down, like in Fura, is actually really good advertising for you. Not that you want to hope for that, because it hurts the ecosystem, but I think a lot of these cases will prove your point you're making here. And then in addition to that, like, what's further down the road for Omnia? What's on your roadmap if you have multiple chains going on? How can you protect the user further with the Omnia protocol?
So there are a few things happening and planned along the road. And we are thinking, so privacy and security are two different things, and we plan to serve them, both of them, for our users. And we are mainly business to business, because we integrate with wallets, exchanges, and other types of applications. But we also give solutions of private access and secure access to the blockchain to the retail part, the users. Just now, if you go to app.omniatech.io, you can generate an endpoint and use it directly into Web3 wallet. So there is already the usage out there for the privacy part. But as I said in the beginnings, we have the front running protection that it's helping. We are planning to use some of the like big farms of nodes that have higher performance to enlarge the privacy mempool that gives the people the ability to go away from the front running, and this will be something very beneficial to the ecosystem, like having more speed, reducing the costs, and so on. And we also tackle something which is called gasless transaction. Basically, the people that do want to make transaction and do not bother with the fees and so on, you can be going on autopilot, paying one flat fee per month or so, and you do not bother with the transaction fee and so on. That's related to the usage and the security. And then comes the part of compliant privacy, which is, like I said, if I make a transaction and let's say I'm a user and I get almost scammed and I get an address to send, let's say, some amount of coins. If you are using in future, it's not implemented right now, it's under development. If you are planning to do a transaction to a scammer and we identify the address of a scammer at the edge point, not on our servers, but on the edge point, like the people decentralized around the protocol, they will drop your transaction for you, meaning that you will click the transaction to be submitted. But if the nodes will and the privacy relayers will see that the recipient is a hacker or a malicious actor, it will drop your transaction for you and not broadcast it out there. So basically, it gives you the security that using Omnia protocol, you will be reduced with the risk of sending funds or whatever to malicious actors.
Awesome. So you're not only protecting them from outside eyes to the RPC node, but also from malicious transactions in the network. I think we've almost come to the end of the podcast. Are there any final thoughts or information you want to share with our audience about Omnia, which we haven't tapped into?
So I think I want to give the people the knowledge that we are now under the early program, meaning that everyone can generate endpoints on a freemium model. We don't charge anything. It only translates to the good usage of the product and the features that we have in. Any feedback coming in, it's very useful, and we reward the people that do that in all kinds of stuff. And we also plan to educate the community out there by writing different kind of Medium articles to explaining the pains out there, because being a first mover out in the space, you need to educate the community in that regard. So is that something that we also planning to do? So if you want to learn more about the things out there and the issues in the space, you can check our channels to see the content that it's put out there weekly.
And which channels are that? Can we find you on Twitter or Discord? Could you name the handles or how we can get to those channels?
Yeah, I think the most accessible one is on Twitter. The account is Omnia_protocol. We also have LinkedIn, Meta channels, and of course Medium channel, which is Omnia Protocol in one line. So that's the channel. We also have a Discord channel and Telegram news and community. You can check the link tree that we have on the Twitter, and you can see all the links together.
Awesome. We'll make sure to check that out. And if you're listening, make sure to give them a follow on Twitter. So you can stay updated and you can test their actual services. Thank you, Cristian, for joining us on this podcast. Even though I already had a good view of what your protocol was doing, it was nice to have a more in-depth view about why this privacy is needed and actually your further plans going forward with Omnia. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you as well, and I appreciate the invite for joining on the podcast.
Okay, that was the podcast. See you next time in another Deus Ex DAO podcast. Have a good day.